Hello and welcome to the Mindful Men podcast, a show inspiring men to be mindful about their lives. Each week, we'll dive into a range of topics that matter to men and hear from everyday people doing extraordinary things. So if you love the show, please give it a 5-star rating and share it with your mates. Now, before we get into this week's episode, please note that some of the content may trigger you. And if this happens, please reach out to your support networks. It's really important. If you can't get enough of Mindful Men, head over to our website. It's www.mindful-men.com.au. Find the show notes and the links to our socials there. But for now, sit back, relax, and let's get mindful. G'day guys, and welcome to another episode of the Mindful Men podcast. I'm your host, Simon Rinnie, and today we're getting mindful about sexuality, hate crimes, and trauma, but also mental health tacked in as well. And joining me for today's discussion, I've got David Keck from Knoxville, Tennessee, USA. How are you going, David?
I'm great, man. I'm so excited to be here. I'm such a fan of the show.
Oh, thank you. I was fortunate to come on your show as well. We are podcasters, and podcasters do this a lot. We swap episodes, and in me sharing my story on your show, you started to share some of your story. I'm like, yes, this is a conversation that would be helpful for the Mindful Men community to help guys to be more mindful about how they're showing up, their behaviors, their feelings, their thoughts, and all sorts of stuff. But to introduce you to the audience, you're the host of the Surviving podcast, which provides inspiring stories of hope and healing and education to individuals who've endured personal trauma and abuse. But more broadly, also, it's a mental health podcast as well. You do talk a lot about mental health, and I guess that's what I was on there to share my story of mental health. But you're also the survivor of a violent hate crime. And so this is a trigger warning that we will get into some pretty dark stuff today. So if things around mental health, about hate crimes, about abuse, trauma, those types of things trigger you and you don't feel like you can get through this episode, by all means, please skip the episode. But if you do stick around, reach out to your support networks afterwards, whether that's a family or friend, a therapist, your doctor, a mental health hotline. It is important that you reach out for support because these episodes, they can be triggering, but we talk about these issues because they're also inspiring. They're inspiring for us to learn that we're not alone in the world and that hope is still available to us, even though we might be in our darkest of days. So please heed that trigger warning if that might affect you. But David, before we get into the dark side of your story, which is pretty dark, and I'm thankful for you to come on and share that story, I'd just like for you to introduce yourself to the audience, give us a bit of context about who you are and, why you think sharing stories is important.
Yeah. Thank you again so much for having me, Simon. And like you said, we will, spit out, and I'll be conscious to make sure I spit out some trigger warnings when we get to those topics. But I always like to tell people that I'm creating a happy ending, right? So it's going to end on a positive note. But yeah, my name is David Keck. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee in the United States. I'm the host of Surviving Podcast. The part of the states that I live in is the southern parts, and we are slowly progressing into mental health and being just open-minded about sexual orientation. I am an open gay man, and I grew up not knowing hate existed out of the television. My best friend was of a different race, and one weekend I was at his church, and then the next weekend he was at my church, and I'm a white man. It was just never... It wasn't a thing in a negative way. We celebrated the differences. I did struggle coming out of the closet and accepting myself because of what religion teaches you, but not necessarily because of what my family had taught me. So when I was 18, I came out of the closet, and I truly did not know hate existed until 9 years ago. And I was 34 at the time, and I'm 42 now. And so this happened also in my adult life. And I speak to so many people that share their stories of trauma that happened to them as a child. And I always say that, we cannot compare trauma, but when something happens to a child, knowing what I went through when my brain was matured and developed completely, and how that one thing, that one night changed everything. And for that to happen to these things to happen to children who are still being molded and developing, man, we have to talk about the hard things.
Anyone who comes into therapy, therapists often go, tell me about your childhood trauma, but yours came in adulthood. I want to take you back to when you came out. And this is an interesting topic, I guess, for someone. So I'm a straight, heterosexual white guy and have a lot of privilege in the world. So I acknowledge that privilege as well. And I was watching a TV show the other day where there's two girls or two women on the show, and they were talking about why is the need for them to come out and publicly come out as gay. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. Like, as a straight guy, we don't need to come out. And on the show, they said, why can't straight people come out as to what their sexual orientation is as well? Like, why do you think this is a thing? And how did that impact you?
I think it's a thing because it's not of the quote unquote norm. But the way that we're going to make it part of the norm is by having the people that, the generations before me and then me and my generation, leading by example and coming out and facing those hard times. I don't think straight people should have to come out. I think that there will be a day that gay people won't have to come out. It's just going to take us a little time to get there. I don't know that I'll see it in my lifetime, but I do think that it's important because there's power in numbers. And the more that people do say, I'm this and it's okay, and you're that and it's okay, and we can still be friends. And even if you don't like me, you can respect me. I think that once we normalize those things, it's going to drastically change. I feel like this new generation is making a huge dent in it. Like I said, I'm not sure that I'll completely see it by lifetime, but it's coming. It's coming.
I can say the same for mental health discussions. And the more we talk about it, the more we can normalize it as well. You said you're from the southern part of the US. I've never been to the US. I'm familiar with the US map. What's it like from your experience in the southern side being openly gay? Like, was that hard to come out? Did you have friends that were gay? How does that compare to other parts of the US as well?
Yeah, so I was an 80s baby. I did not know other gay people. I truly thought I was the only one that existed, and which led me to think that something was wrong with me because at that time it wasn't on TV. I didn't have anyone to look up to. I didn't have anyone that I inspired to be because I was different. And then I had the religion aspect on things too, which means I'm different and doomed for hell, and that's a lot for a child to carry. Luckily, I had a great, family with a great foundation. The South is progressing and we're getting there, but we're a little close-minded. It takes us a little longer. When you have like New York and California and those bigger cities, those are more diverse versus where I am. People ask me all the time why I haven't left, why I haven't went to one of those bigger cities. And especially after the hate crime, why did I not pack up and leave? But I have to be part of the change. I have to be part of protecting the little Davids that are out there that this can't happen to them.
And by sharing your story, that goes a long way to normalizing it and protecting the future generations. That's why I do this. I picture my son a lot. He's 8. No, he's not 8. He's 7. Just gave him an extra year. I'm sure he'd be happy about that. But he's just turned 7. And I often think, why do I do this? And his face comes into my mind, the little version of me for the future, that he can talk about things and be okay with that as well and not feel shame and stigma that I felt for so many years. You talked about religion, and I'm interested to hear about your aspect of this because people that I've spoken to who have been brought up in a faith-based community or religion really struggle with concepts like this of showing their true identity because they're worried about what the Bible says or what maybe the church community might say. Like, how was your experience coming out and did you continue going to church? Did you get a bit of backlash? How did you navigate that?
My immediate family is so supportive and so amazing. Some of my distant family is not that great when it comes to being open-minded because of what they think the Bible says. When you actually do read and research and do your homework with it, what is being taught isn't really necessarily what is in the Bible, right? Depending on who you talk to. And I finally realized that I'm just going to have to develop a relationship with God myself that isn't influenced by other people. And that meant I kind of had to break up with him a little bit. I had to divorce him and walk away from the relationship some and kind of start all over. That is a journey I'm still on. I tried that before my hate crime. And then during the recovery of my hate crime, I blamed God. I said, I invited you into my life, into my home. I begged you to make me what society wants me to be, and you wouldn't do it, and I kept my word to you. I loved you. I believed in you. I kept my word. Where the hell were you? you
Mm.
know? And then I realized that luckily, God, whatever God it is you believe in, he, she, they, whatever, is a big, big creation that can handle my little temper tantrums. So we're working on our relationship and beliefs, but I really had to get back to the basics with it. I had to retrain myself what God is. And what I finally learned one day, it's actually something my father told me, is he said, David, if hell is filled with people like you, it can't be that bad of a place. And I was like, damn, like that stuck with me. That
Yeah.
was one of the most empowering things I've ever heard that really set me on a sturdier footing, I guess.
That sounds really profound for a father to say that. What was his experience or his response to you when you did come out? Like you said, you've had a pretty nurturing and supportive nuclear family. Talk us through that. Like, did you hesitate? Like, were you worried about what he might say or what your mum might say as well?
I feared it a little bit with my dad just because he's a good old country boy. He's educated, gave us an amazing life, but I mean, he's a good old country boy, and so I did fear it a little bit. But I think what played in my favor is my parents had me at 14 years old. And so then in the 80s, my mom was kicked out of school. You can't be in school and pregnant. My mom had to get her GED, and now they have daycares and high schools. It's completely different now. But I think that kind of helped them be open-minded to things because they knew how it was to be discriminated against because of, whatever path they were on. I mostly had the fear of religion more than so with my family. But the funny part of it is I didn't come out. My parents told me I was gay. So, yeah, like my parents, I've never known them to be married, but they've always been. I have four great parents. They're married just to other people, but we did not have that broken home. Growing up, they lived in the same subdivision. It was nothing to come home and have my mom and stepmom having a glass of wine shopping on TV network, like that was a norm for us. So it's actually kind of funny because so my mom's house, we would walk in through the garage and the carpet was white and the living room was white. And it was pretty much just for looks. It was like, oh, that's pretty. And you just keep walking. Like the only person that's ever sat on the couch was the preacher. And so my dad came over and he came to the front door. So my mom and I went to the front door. And then just as we were talking, we sat down on the white furniture. And there's a reason I'm telling you this. So we're sitting down and the conversation comes up because I had just recently broke up with my high school girlfriend. And so my dad came over because my mom called him to come over to have a discussion with me. So we're sitting there, white couch, white carpet. And my mom says, Scott, David's gay. And I throw up all over the white couch, the white carpet. That's why I gave that detail. So once we had that taken care of and went to the den, my dad was like, I knew this was going to happen one day, and it was nothing. So we had a family discussion about it, and they said that the reason they wanted to bring it to my attention that they knew is because they knew my battle was with religion, but that they thought the sin is that I'm lying to everybody, that I was potentially going to marry a female and have children with her. And then what happens when I have my midlife crisis and cheat and abandon, and they didn't want that for me or my wife or my unborn children. And so that was just really cool. I know a lot of supportive families, but at that time I didn't know any gay people. I'd met a couple here and there. So that was a really interesting experience.
We talked a bit on your show about these social constructs of masculinity, what it means to be a boy and then become a man as well. And it's almost like what you're saying there, like your parents gave you a different identity in this conversation. Before that, like, did you feel like you're dating this girl? Like, did you feel like it was the wrong thing, that it wasn't quite right? Or did it feel right to you?
I tricked myself to think that it felt right because that's what I'm supposed to do, right? That's what society told me. I had the potential to live the best life. I was a white, straight man with a pretty girl and a family that was decently successful. Yeah, how luckier do you get? You know? And then I'm going to throw it in with the wrench of, hey, I'm gay. So, like I tricked myself to think it was right.
Mm.
And it was a lie. It was all a lie.
I'm assuming it felt so relieving or freeing after you vomited and got your bearings on the white carpet and all that. So freeing and liberating, do you think? Or talk us through that. Like, did you like have a moment where you just like the weight was lifted off your shoulders?
It truly was. Like I slept so great that night. I don't know if it was mental exhaustion or the freeing or maybe both. I felt so seen and heard and respected. And, when my family told me that we can't love all of you if you're hiding parts of you from us. And now those parts were out and they got the chance to love all of me. And so that was really cool. I have two younger brothers, and they're to this day my best friends. It was never a thing. It was almost being born again. Finally I get to start living. I've been in the shadows. I've been hiding. I would try to deepen my voice. I would try to walk a certain way. I tried to be everything that I wasn't.
And what about your friends? Did like when this all happened, like did they know earlier, or was this after your mum and dad or your mum dropped it on you?
Yeah, so that night I went to back to my house. I was 18, so it was college life. We had the boys' house and the girls' house, and I lived in the girls' house. But we were all on the porch having drinks or whatever. And I was like, guys, I got to tell you all something. I'm gay. Like I just spit it out. And they were like, mm-hmm. And I was like, no, that's it. Like, and they're like, okay. Like they were like, we were just waiting for you to tell us.
Wow. And you said earlier that you felt like you were the only person in the world who was gay. So did this open up a world that you didn't know existed, or you kind of started to see some connections with different people? How did that evolve as well?
Yeah, so it kind of became, oh, I know a guy or I know a friend, and there was little places locally that people would hang out at, like little coffee shops. And I would go there and I would slowly start, making friends. Most of my friends were straight for the longest time, but I still felt like I could be me, which was nice. But as I was getting older and getting more involved in the community, relationships definitely started happening. But it took a little time. I'll tell you. When I started serving and bartending and being in the restaurant industry is where you meet such a diverse group of people, and that's where most of my friends come from.
Moving towards the hate crime aspect, like before that happened, did you feel like you were in a very well supported community? Things were going well. Talk us through that in the lead up to the hate crime itself.
Sure. Yeah, I was a bartender. So if someone's steak came out wrong, sometimes I would get called a slur. But if I was a woman, I would have been called the B word. If I was a different race, I would have been called some slang ugly word with that, just because that's all they had. So, and that only happened a few times, but it wasn't really enough to impact me in any negative way. It was just somebody that just didn't want to pay for their food. So I never felt scared. All the places I went to was predominantly straight. There was, one little gay bar that I would go to, with a couple of friends every now and then. But I never felt to be in harm. I seen ignorance, but that's expected anywhere you go, right? Regardless of what it is. Remember when if a man wore pink, that was a big deal, like ignorance is always going to find you, right? But it was never threatening to me. And that leads to, the hate crime.
Talk us through what happened, and as much as you feel comfortable sharing as well. I don't want to re-traumatize you or anything like that. But yeah, talk us through, I guess, first, what is a gay hate crime? Define that for us, and then lead into, I guess, the event that had such a big impact on your life.
Sure. So a hate crime is if someone picks you out, points you out, targets you based on religion, gender, sexual orientation, if that is the reason why they've done what they've done, then that is what is considered a hate crime. I battled for the longest time. I was like, I feel like every crime is a hate crime. Like, you didn't steal that woman's purse because you loved her. You know what I mean? So I battled with that for a long time. And I still kind of do sometimes, but then I start to see that when we're able to attach the hate crime titles, that again is bringing that awareness, and so sometimes we have to have those labels. So that helped me accept hate crime labeling, I guess. So what led to it is there is a bar that my friends and I would go every Thursday. It was our Cheers, if anybody ever watched that show where everyone knows their name, and I never, it's predominantly straight. My group of friends were also diverse, but for the most part, it's a predominantly straight place. Now, it is in one of the higher end income bracket ends in Knoxville. And so that kind of plays a factor on the class of people that will be there. And I truly mean all of that respectfully, but just trying to paint that picture, right? So I was going through a breakup. I was with a guy for 2 years and we were going to build a house. And then we had a long conversation and realized that I'm not sure that we're in love with each other, And so it was best that we broke up. And I get depressed after a breakup. I don't do well with those. I need a couple of days to listen to sad country music and cry. And I'm really good at doing that sometimes. But it was a friend's birthday and she called and she's like, hey, I know you're going through a hard time, but it's my birthday. We're going to go to Bull Feathers, which is the bar that we would frequent, sing some songs because it's karaoke and have a couple drinks. Like, get yourself dressed up, come out, come celebrate with us. I was like, all right, it's time that I do that. So I go, and here's where I'm going to throw the trigger warning. I will be very tactful at the way that I say things, but this is where it's going to get a little rough. So I walk in, everything's great and normal. See all the regulars, high-fiving and cheersing people as we're walking through. And we go to our table, we get up, we sing songs, and then I get up to go to the restroom. And this is all caught on surveillance, okay? So I get up to go to the restroom, and this guy stops me and he starts talking to me. We're assuming about my necktie. So I'm saying assuming because there is surveillance, but you can't hear it. It's a loud karaoke bar, but I kept doing this. I kept pointing at my tie, and then I pulled out a business card, which has all my information on it because it was a new venture, a new business venture I'd just started. And so it looked like a pleasant conversation. I go to the restroom by myself, come out, walk right past him, don't even look at him. He, I guess doesn't even acknowledge me. We sat down, or I sat down with my friends. We have like one more song to sing and we finish our cocktails and we pay our tab, and three of us left together. Well, within 2 to 3 minutes, surveillance camera shows that he left. Now, the part, I don't remember any of this from the brain damage. So a lot of it is what was shown on surveillance and by witnesses, as well as the testimonies in court. So allow a little grace with that. But my friends say that they saw me because I got to park really close to the facility and they were parked kind of back from it. So by the time that I got in my car, they see me drive off as they were getting into their car. So they know that he was not in my car. So from there, and again, this is just what we've been able to piece together, okay? So surveillance shows that he walks out. There's no outside cameras, so they don't know if he got in a car. They don't know if he got in my car, which really wouldn't make any sense because my friends say they saw me drive off, but he had the business card that had my information on it. So he shows up to my apartment, knocks on my door, and he is trained military and uses hands as a weapon and had me knocked unconscious in first hit, is what he says. So from there, he moves my body, drags my body from room to room, brutally abusing it and sexually assaulting me. He sexually assaults me with his body as well as with foreign objects that he was finding throughout the house. He continues to beat me to the point that he gets my cell phone and calls his baby mama and confesses to murder, that he just killed a gay guy. So she's telling him to turn himself in, and he's saying no. And so he steals my car, my money, and my credit cards because I was a server, always had cash on me. But where we have a hard time piecing pieces together is you're stealing my car, but you got to my house. So did you get dropped off? Because you obviously don't have a car there. Why would you steal my car? So that's where it came into, did I give you a ride? Did I have enough alcohol in me and felt safe enough to think I was giving you a ride to your car and it was all a trick? Like, we don't know, right? So he goes to another bar, and starts drinking on my tab. And while he's there, he is bragging about the F slur that he just killed. They don't call the cops, they kick him out. And he gets back into my car. At this time, he's drunk, and he gets back in my car that he has stolen and drives off, and he wrecks it. Well, when he wrecks it, the police come to the scene. He's covered in blood, but it's not his blood. The wreck wasn't bad enough to damage his body. So he confessed to murder.
Wow.
Yeah, they found me, luckily still alive, but it took them 18 hours. So I went 18 hours with lack of oxygen and having seizures and barely hanging on.
Wow. That is, I'm going to say it's fucked up.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you for sharing. Like, I know that these types of stories can be really difficult to relive. And as you said, like, you're piecing parts of it together because of your memory. Talk us through the memory loss. Like, where does your memory stop? Where does it kick back in?
Sure. So I battled a long time because I felt like I remember getting to the bar, but then I don't know if it's pieces of me remembering other times I had walked into the bar. I don't really know when my memory started as far as that night. I will say that the brain trauma was so bad that when I was in the hospital and they contacted my family to come, when my family came in, granted, my eyes were very swollen. I couldn't even open my eyes, but I could see silhouettes. And I thought my mom and grandmother, I thought they were nurses, didn't even recognize their voices. It took me a minute. There is forgive the trauma, Doc, but there is a horrible car accident that my family and I were in. It was my grandmother, my great grandmother, my great aunt, and my little brother and I, and we were hit by a drunk driver, and it killed everybody but me and my little brother. And I was 11 at that time. So when I woke up, and then when they told me that, no, I'm your mom, I thought I was back at the car accident. I thought I was 11-year-old boy back at the car accident. And I kept asking, where's Brandon, my brother? Because I was afraid, something had happened to him.
Wow.
Yeah. My memory did start coming back pretty quickly, just as in remembering people. One of the things that actually really helped me is because I was bedridden for a while. So I would scroll through Facebook and I would see pictures and read comments and start piecing things together of, oh, I don't know who that is. But it took about a good week for me to really feel comfortable with my memory. I cannot say for sure if I remember anything about that night. I have memories of it, but I don't know if it was just implanted there just by the stories I heard and then watching the surveillance tapes. If that is one of those things where it's like, well, I'm supposed to remember this, so I'm just going to make myself think that I do to make me feel better. But I truly don't know any memory.
So waking up in the hospital, talk us through that. Like, did people have to tell you what happened? I'm assuming so, because you wouldn't have had the memory. And talk us through like that initial recovery and coming to realizing what actually happened.
At the hospital, we thought, and my family even thought, that I had just been mugged and I was robbed. We didn't know all of it, right? And then obviously I was asleep a lot of the time, but my mom said that the door opened and it was the sexual assault therapy center with a nurse to do a rape test on me, which is collecting evidence. And my mom was like, wait, what? And so I don't remember that at all. What I do remember that was very traumatizing is the nurse didn't seal the door all the way to the room. And so when one of my friends showed up, they came in the room as I'm going through this rape test, which is very violating. And then you have someone else come in. And so it's just like, it just kept reoccurring. But it wasn't even registering to me that I was getting a rape test, you know?
Mm.
It was about the third day that I had got home from the hospital, and I had to move back in with my family, obviously, during that time. And a detective showed up and was talking to us. Like, we didn't realize my car had been stolen and wrecked and that it was impounded somewhere because I lived by myself. Everyone just thought my car was at home. There was just so many little things that we did that took days for us to even know. And then that's when he was like, he said, David, you were a victim of a hate crime. Like you were sought out and raped. And the rape test came back, positive. They could tell that I had had sex. There was this whole thing with that too. But yeah, it's like all these little things just started coming in randomly. And then, you had mentioned a couple of times that I'm free to say how much ever, and and that you'd respect that, and thank you so much for that. But I've always been an open book, and here's why. So the media gets a hold of my story. They want to talk to me, but I can't talk. I'm knocked out. So they go to the police department and get a copy of the police report. Well, my attacker tried to play like the gay defense of I did this to him because he hit on me sexually to make me seem to be at fault. And that's the story they released. So day 6, I'm plastered all over the media of gay guy goes to straight bar, takes straight man home for sex and gets beat up. And that's not what happened. Well, then that caused the death threats to begin. People wanting to say that I should be in jail and not him, that I got what I deserve, that I shouldn't have been in a straight bar anyways. People wanting to find me to quote unquote finish the job.
Wow. Even if you did say, make a move on this guy, you went home and did that consensually, it wouldn't necessarily have to result in a hospital stay. Like you've been absolutely battered and bruised to the point where you've no memory. Like that just seems bewildering to me. Like, and that's, I guess, that's where society goes, doesn't it? It's us and them. It's the othering. We, as a social worker, we learn about the othering. It's, I said at the start, like I'm a privileged white heterosexual male, and that is what privilege is the definition almost of in the Western world, particularly. To go from coming out as gay, thanks, mum, to the supportive friends, the supportive community leading up to that night, to then experience the total opposite of that, where if you're unsafe, you're being victimized very publicly. That must have been an absolute knife to the heart, almost.
It changed everything, man. I wanted to hide away. I love fashion. I would always wear like bright clothes and bright colors. Like I'm one of the guys that I love pink. I love, blues, and Easter. The pastel colors is my favorite time, and I've always been a loud dresser, but then I got to where I wanted to just go back to the shadows. I wanted to wear black and not be seen, wear a ball cap, not hide my face, try to puff out my chest as if, I'm intimidating, and I'm not. But one thing that I can say that the state of Tennessee did do for me is I was put into sexual assault group therapy, and it saved my life. I needed therapy. I needed help. I did not realize the lack of even education I had on mental health, and how it truly is. I say this all the time now, but if your lungs are damaged, you go see a specialist. If your heart is damaged, you go see a specialist. If your brain is damaged, you need to see a specialist. I even say the best therapists need a therapy, So I live by it now, but I've never been a big guy. I think, so I weighed 140 pounds at the time of my attack. And within a few weeks, I was down to 98 pounds. I truly look like a bobblehead, like one of those old car bobblehead things. Like I
Yeah.
truly look like that. And people started associating me with having a drug addiction, and which I didn't, but this was killing me. It was to the point where my doctor said, you might not have died the day that he did this, but if you don't figure something out, you're going to die because of this. He will still be the cause of your death, and that really shook me because he would win. I'm here right now and running my mouth right now because I refuse to let him win. You know what I mean?
Stick it to the man.
Yeah.
Talk us through the recovery. Talk us through that therapy session, like the process, what it felt like to, I guess, did you have any hesitations going into that? Or was it just like, I got to get this out? Talk us through that process.
My hesitation was when I saw TV shows and therapists, and a few that I had went to, we were active with therapy, after the car accident and things like that. I had just never been through anything like this, but I always pictured it being a man, and I pictured it being that alpha male that probably don't like my kind, And so I was like, I cannot be locked up in a room with this straight man that will wish that person had just taken me off the planet when he had the chance, and luckily I was very vocal about that. And I said, I want a woman. I want her in this age range. And they introduced me to Melinda. And she, I will probably get her name tattooed on me one day. The tools and the resources that she gave me was amazing. And I was going 3 times a week, and I needed it. And it got to where I wanted it. I thought I was going and talking to a friend. And what was so great is that friend wanted to hear me talk.
You touched on something there around the types of therapists that we engage with. I remember when I first went and spoke about my mental health, the first 3, 4 therapists, I wanted women. I felt weird talking to another guy about stuff because I know from my own personal struggles how hard it is to talk, but it felt unnatural. It felt like I was looking for a nurturer. I've since, found the guys that are the nurturers, and I use them as my therapists these days. But you touched on a really important part there is finding the right fit for you. Someone who sees you for who you are, hears you for who you are, is not going to judge you. It's just going to be an open, honest discussion and a healing process as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell people all the time, if you go to a therapist and you don't feel that connection with them, and you don't feel like they can get the bare naked truth, or that you can give that bare naked truth, then you need to explore other options. Don't go to them out of obligation, and because someone else they're not going to be offended. They're not going to be mad at you. Someone else is probably in line waiting for a spot to open that they would connect with. So I tell people all the time, don't waste your time with it. If you go once or twice and you're not feeling that connection, get out. Be very open and honest about it. They probably have someone they could refer you to.
And so your recovery was a difficult thing. Do you feel like you're still recovering from it? You're still working through the trauma, or is it something that you've parked for a while? Talk us through that, I guess, the progress since.
Yeah. So the therapy, really became something that I needed and I wanted. And I felt so good when I started putting weight on again. And when I took a picture and I looked alive. So where I was having therapy and where I started using my voice of, being a man that is sexually assaulted and facing all the hate that was still coming to me. Because keep in mind, during the first year, every month I was in court facing this guy. That is stretched out. And so I was having to see him once a month. And my family and supporters were there, but so were his. And they were not all behind bars. So I got into that whole fear of, I can't go to the person behind me at Walmart could be someone that either recognized me and wants to finish the job, or someone that's after me because their buddy is in jail because of me. And in reality, people did recognize me, but everybody was always nice to my face. It was keyboard bullies, of course, but everyone was always nice to my face. But I had that mentality and thought of the world is after me. And so I battled with that a lot. I battled with religion. One of the things that truly I battled with men. I didn't realize that men with beards were a trigger until I finally got back to my apartment and was going to try to live by myself again. And the internet provider had to come out to set everything back up. And the doorbell rang, and it was a man with a beard. And I started screaming, "Get the hell away from me. You can't come in here. Don't kill me." Poor guy. I called my mom, Luckily, she calls Xfinity, the internet company, and was like, "Please let that man know that," you know, because I'm thinking now, I'm like, every time he rings the doorbell, he's probably wondering, is someone yell at me through the door again like that crazy guy did? But one of the things that truly helped me with therapy is I had to face my fear of men. So I became active with helping them start a sexual assault group center for men. And so every Thursday, me and a bunch of other men went to therapy. And they're my brothers, they're amazing. We're all kinds of kinds. There's been a few gay people in and out, but for the most part, it's been predominantly straight. But that's what really helped me face my fear.
I wanted to circle back to the court cases. You mentioned before that the media got a hold of your story and was painting you as the opposite of reality, really. How long did the court process play out? Did it obviously, I'm assuming it's finished now, the court's matter's finished and revealed the truth. And then did the media change their tack? Did they portray you as the actual victim?
Yes. So this happened in 2014 and it was election year. And it was also when a lot of the gay rights marriage stuff was happening. So my case was something that needed to be swept under the rug because people, no matter which way it went, someone was going to be pissed. And so the media did release a few stories of giving out the truth of, surveillance shows this. And so the newscaster ends up calling me one day and she was like, David, I just got a call from the judge and they made her take down every video and news article that painted the true picture, except for the very first one, which is still out there, of painting me as the bad guy.
Wow.
They were having to paint that narrative.
And so what happened since? Have you been able to, I guess this is part of the process, you having your own podcast and you doing the men's group and all that, that's part of the process to say, hang on a second, no, there's a different side of this story.
It's kind of like what you had hit on a while back is even if I did bring him home for sex, it would have been two consensual adults. And if at any point it was not consensual, it would have stopped. One of the points that I made to somebody when they were questioning me about it is I said, I get hit on by women and not one time have I thought I need to kill her. I have told her that I'm not interested. And if it started feeling awkward or if lines were being crossed, I excused myself from the situation. I never hit her, never wanted to, never thought about it. So if people do come at me with well, what if you did take him home for sex and what? It would have been two consensual adults.
Yeah. And so what happened with the court case? Like, did he go to jail?
So he was in jail for the year that the trial was happening, and then he was sentenced to 12 years. But then on my birthday, I get a phone call that said my attacker was being set out on free soil due to good time. And it had only been 4 months. So he had done, it's either 14 to 16 months total that he done for a 12-year sentence. And he was released on good time before I could even walk without a walker. And I said, but how does he get time? I haven't had good time. How does he get it?
Have you ever crossed paths with him again? Like, I'm assuming you'd be really scared about walking on the same side of the road to him and stuff like that. Did he move? Like, how did that play out?
So he lived about 45 minutes to an hour away from me. So the night that he was in my hometown and at that bar is because he and the mother of his child just broke up because he had been discharged from the military for drugs. So he called one of his buddies and his buddy was like, yeah, we can hang out. You can stay all night with me, but I have a date tonight. So you're just going to have to go hang out at a bar while I'm on my date. And so that's what led him to Knoxville. Now, when he gets out of jail, he moves closer to me than where he originally lived. So I did go through the whole, I would have to give myself pep talks. I can't walk into a store without that fear. And sometimes in the beginning, before I got better with my mental health, I would go to Walmart or a restaurant, sit in the parking lot, cry, and then leave because I couldn't go in. There is a lifelong restraining order, but I feel like the restraining order to me is validation, but it doesn't protect me because I feel like we all have an unspoken restraining order. I don't come to your house and touch you and do things to you unless you invite me. And if you invite me, If halfway through it, you tell me to stop, then I stop. You know what I mean? So the restraining order didn't mean anything to me until I realized that it was validation that people believed.
Yeah.
So I have never ran into him. I know that he has went back to jail a couple of times because he is on probation, but it's been small charges like drug charges and just marijuana drug charges, not even anything big.
Yeah.
But he would do a few months at a time and get back out.
Tell us where you're at now. Like we talked off air a bit about trauma not discriminating. Trauma can pick us out, from a crowd, no matter who you are, what walk of life, mental health. In your case, a violent hate crime. You're the recipient of that. I'm not say even recipient. That's not even a nice word. You didn't want it.
Well, you know what, man? There's no nice way to say any of this. So we just use whatever words we can. And
That's right. We use whatever words come to mind. So like, where are you at now? Like we're talking and you appear very comfortable, sharing your story and obviously comfortable enough to have your own podcast about it. How are you going at the moment?
I am happier and doing better than ever. I think I might have got a little sidetracked off of this question when it originally asked, but the answer actually fits better here now. So part of my story being so public, I could not hide away from it. So part of me regaining that control, which is a lot of what, if you ask any trauma survivor, that's what they say. I want to have the control back. And so how I got that control back was by telling my story. You are not going to paint a narrative. I'm going to come to you with all of the facts and I'm going to set the record straight. So I was going to the men's sexual assault group therapy, and it hit me one day that we had Black men, white men, gay, straight, didn't matter. We were all kinds in there. And it's almost that double-edged sword, right? That if there's anything in this world that does not discriminate, it's trauma. It's not going to be age or race or sexual orientation or gender. We all have some form of it. And that was, see, now I'm stuck at words. Like it was a double-edged sword kind of realization. It was, I'm not alone, but why can't we all just love each other and not discriminate? Why does the one thing in the world that doesn't discriminate have to be based on something so shitty? That's where I was struggling with it. But so COVID happened and therapy stopped and I needed it. And so I thought, okay, I'll spend the $1,500. I'll buy podcast equipment. I'll record 2 episodes. My mom will give it a heart on social media or a thumbs up or whatever. And then I'll get bored with it and throw it in the closet and be done. But I was wrong. I had so many people reaching out to me that was saying that they have gay people in their family and what happened to me could have happened to them. And it's even changed their mind toward how they treat gay people. I, had a lot of women reaching out to me, but then I started getting men reaching out to me. And these were like the straight alpha males there's this one man that is ex-military, that is a big ass bodybuilding tattoo artist in California. And it's just been so great. But what I also this part of my journey has been so great because this is not the path I would be on if what happened to me didn't happen. And I was in an interview for a podcast past summertime, and they do this rapid fire question. And the very last question was, would you change what happened to you? And immediately I said no. And you could even see on the video, I have that what the fuck look because I did not expect that answer, right? And I had to go outside and have a beer and pet my dog and just regain composure. But I was like, you know what? No, I wouldn't change what happened to me. And in order for me to not make this in vain, then I need to bring awareness to it. And what was really bothering me that was such an eye-opener with being with the men in the sexual assault center is they were all taught to hide it. They were taught to press it down. Every one of them had an alcohol or drug addiction. Every one of them had a divorce. They had charges against them for maybe domestic violence because all they've been taught is to shove it down until they explode. And I want to change that.
And that's the power of sharing our stories. We can inspire other guys and girls around the world, or however you're identified, to recognize that we're not alone. That there are other people out there who have a similar story, not the same story, it's never the same, but similar, and can encourage us to reach out for help, or maybe even just start sharing their own story. So that's why I love podcasting, and I've really valued you coming on to this show, helping us get mindful about sexuality, about growing up in Tennessee, about hate crimes, about trauma, mental health, men's health, men's well-being. So thanks so much for coming on. David, before I let you go, a couple more questions. Thinking about your story in its entirety, we touched on it a lot today. And actually, I could probably spend another 3 hours talking to you about everything in your life. What's one message you'd like to share with the audience? A moment of inspiration, or something just for us to get mindful about knowing your story?
I learned to enjoy the ride. When I got back that control, when I realized that this might not be the road that I chose to be put on, but I'm driving the car, and damn it, I'm going to drive it and listen to the song that I want to listen to, and have my windows down if I want. I'm in control. And when I learned to laugh at the silly things again, and I tell people all the time, like, I just learned to enjoy the ride, and that's my hope and wish for everybody, is that they find the beauty in it, and that will be part of gaining back their control.
When you're driving, what song is playing?
So this is where people laugh at me. So I love female country artist. Reba McEntire is my number one. And where people really laugh at me is the sadder the song, the happier I am. So I'm not rocking out to any, like, I'm listening to Heartbreak, Tear in Your Beer shit, but it's what makes me so
It's interesting you say that, because I think of myself often. I often get asked this question as a therapist myself. I always say, Simon, like, do you get upset by the stories you hear? And I often say, well, no, I actually quite enjoy the stories. They are heartbreaking, a lot of them, and they're challenging, and they're full on, just like your story as well. But I actually really enjoy that moment and hearing that story. And if it is really sad, like, I don't walk away feeling any sadness or anything. I actually feel happy that I'm there supporting another guy to open up and share. And it's very similar, but not the same, but a similar feeling to that song that I have as a therapist as well. But David, if people have been listening and they're really keen to connect in with you, like, do you have social media? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so I tried to make it as simple as possible. So I'm Surviving Podcast on every platform. You can Google my name, but I'm on every platform. My podcast is mostly audio right now. We're working on a YouTube channel, but I'm on all the podcast platforms. Of course, Apple and Spotify are the two, most popular. And I do want to throw out there that my show is one of those that you're not going to leave feeling down and depressed. Like, we start with a laugh, we end with a laugh. We show that there's hope along the way. And I've never had anyone tell me that they've left not enjoying it. So.
Well, I was a guest on your show, and I enjoyed every moment of our discussion as well. So thanks for having me on your show.
Of course.
And we'll put the links in the show notes so people can easily access your podcast and your socials as well. On that note, to leave on a lighter note, we have talked about some deep and dark and heavy stuff, and also some fun stuff as well. I keep thinking of you spewing up on your mum's carpet. That's got to stick for me for a little while. But the last thing I ask all of my guests is to plug something that's making you feel good at the moment. And that could be a book, a TV show, what you're listening to on the radio. It could be a self-care activity, something that's just, lighting you up that you can share with our audience, and maybe they can check it out for themselves as well.
Yeah, I am getting into learning what grounding myself means. And I've learned that I love this tree in my backyard, and I pick 20 minutes a day where I go, and I've got a chair under it now, and I take my shoes off and I feel my feet in the grass, and I may have a podcast on, I may have music on, I may read a book, but I love it. And I've started doing that for myself at least 20 minutes a day. So right now, in this moment, that is my high of every day.
COVID, you mentioned COVID, and I remember COVID being a moment where we spent more time, because we were locked down, in our garden, and we would actually go out in the garden and pick through the trees to find grasshoppers with my son, for example, and collect them in like a little bucket and stuff like that. And there's something magical about being grounded in nature that is really healing as well. So I love that plug. But David, again, thanks so much for coming on, sharing your story, getting vulnerable, getting mindful with me. I really have enjoyed listening listening to you, and obviously, creating a new friend from across the globe. I can call you that now as part of my Mindful Men community. So thanks so much for coming on, and I look forward to following your journey.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thank you so much.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode, and I hope you got some value from it. If anything triggered your mental health today, please reach out to your support networks. Also, if you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your mates. For more from Mindful Men, you can check us out on Instagram and YouTube, and I'll throw the links to these pages in the show notes below. But until next time, stay mindful.